Alright, so let's talk about Zoro's power-ups. Zoro is a swordsman wanting to be the strongest swordsman in the world. We know, or we have a pretty good idea of where he comes from. It rhymes with Wamo. Alright, but getting into it, I mentioned in a previous video that the monster trio has shown signs of the fourth Haki use, even Zoro, but also that swordsmen seem to interact with energy slightly different than most people in One Piece. We've seen Zoro create tornadoes, cut fire, and even create fire. Yes, create fire. To quickly get this out of the way, but to prove the point that there is fourth Haki of some type, and Zoro can use it, when Zoro fought zombie Ryuma, at the end of the fight, Zoro's last attack was Flying Dragon Blaze, where his cut lit Ryuma's corpse on fire into a blue flame, even having the sword god questioning, the wound is catching on fire? This tells me that this ability that Zoro showed is beyond even Ryuma's understanding, the man who knew Ryo, Haki, everything about swordsmanship. I think this interaction is beyond just an elemental ability. I think that Zoro instead is demonstrating some kind of soul energy cutting ability. I think there are examples of this, but I think before we get to that, I want to talk about Zoro's spirit animal, the tiger. Oda has said that Zoro resembled a shark, but recently there's been many examples of Zoro resembling a tiger, and it also fits his powers and movesets. Specifically the Byakko in Japanese and Chinese mythology. The Byakko is the king of beasts and controls the wind, which is convenient because Zoro's primary elemental Haki is wind, it seems like. Zoro specifically, and also some advanced swordsmen, are able to project their slashes as wind projectiles. When Zoro first debuted this in Skypiea, he specifically said, "Have you ever seen a flying slash attack?" Then it was later even more solidified that more advanced swordsmen are able to command air against his fight against the zombie Ryuma. One of the tests of strength they had was this face-off, when Ryuma showed his sword thrust that was able to project and create a hole in the back, and Zoro was able to match it with a projectile slash behind Ryuma. Brook, being a swordsman, rationalized it that they were so strong that they were able to thrust air into a projectile. It feels like even Fujitora was surprised by Zoro's ability of using flying slashes, and also noted how aggressive his fighting style was. Even in openings, there are teases about Zoro having wind power, and we see time and time again him using Twister and Cyclone-like moves. Then on top of that, even without swords, Zoro with no sword style in the Davy Back fight was able to use Dragon Twister, which looked like he was channeling the energy of a dragon, and swung his arms to create air pressure slices. Like Rankyaku from Rokushiki shown by the CP9, which is a martial arts that in another video I'll talk more about. Then again, this was shown in an anime-only scene in Wano, where his swords were confiscated and he used Dragon Twister again. Another thing that makes it feel like Zoro is more attuned with the air is the fact that unlike other characters who specifically hear the voice of all things, Zoro felt the energy by hearing the breath of all things, which feels like a subtle hint towards an affinity for air. The way he talked about cutting objects in this scene reminded me of the way Sabo talked about objects too, like in Dressrosa. He realized that the stadium had a core, and then he pumped air into it and destroyed it. In a way, it feels like Zoro is able to cut things no matter how big or sturdy because he can cut life energy. The fact that Zoro senses life the way he does is very animal-like. And before I go into spirit energy stuff, I want to start here and say that I think Zoro has 2 primary power-ups before end of series. If you haven't watched my Devil Fruit Haki video yet, watch that one first before continuing. But basically, I think each of the monster trio is going to awaken themselves as a class of Devil Fruit. And I think Zoro has already, but in the future more clearly, assimilate himself as a wild beast and be more like a Natural Zoan. That sounds really confusing and weird, but Zoro already feels like he represents the king of beasts, the Byakko. He has wind energy and most of his moves are imitating animals. But even more so than that, before and after the time skip, we see this technique where Zoro just gets massive biceps like an ape. Like sure, we can pass this off as him just being ultra strong, but you know what this resembles? Zoan Devil Fruits, or Seimei Kikan. I think Zoro in the pursuit of his desires has been referred to as a wild, violent beast plenty of times, and it will get to the point where Zoro will literally use his willpower to convert his body to that similar of a Zoan Devil Fruit user. It sounds outlandish again, but if you watch my Devil Fruit theory video, I left out Zoans from there specifically for this, because if the other ones are possible, and you tie in Seimei Kikan, then it makes sense that Zoro could do this also. I think that when you think about what Zoro really wants and tie it into Haki willpower logic, Zoro wants to become the strongest swordsman, and when you look at how he has gone on to achieve that throughout the entire series, it's been by imitating animals. I thought that the contrast during the time skip was even more interesting because he trained against animals that were imitating humans, the Humandrills. And we know how much Oda likes to create parallels, so it feels like Zoro is set up to be a human that imitates animals instead. And it's not just physical appearance. I love this scene where he cuts Monet because there's so much depth to the scene, which I'll get to later. But the main thing is that in this scene, he literally refers to himself as a wild beast. And on the approach to Monet, he scares her to the point where she is paralyzed. And we've seen this ability that Zoro has to cause fear and freeze people before, but this feels different than Conqueror's Haki. And interestingly enough, tigers are able to do this naturally. They produce a low frequency roar that is below audible levels that apparently freezes their prey. This is a wind sound based technique that again ties back into the Byakko and Zoro. Like this roar from Rora Noa Zoro tied to Zoro's Conqueror Haki is a terrifying combo. I feel like his title as the Pirate Hunter is obsolete and it should be something like the King of the Beasts or Beast King. Like just imagining here, but when Luffy takes down Kaido, the King of Beasts, it would be crazy if Zoro like demonstrates himself as the apex predator amongst all of the animal Zoans and they all start following Zoro, the new King of Beasts, and again boosting the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. That's probably not going to happen, but would be crazy since Kaido's crew isn't exactly loyal like Whitebeard's crew, but rather loyal out of fear and defeat, thinking Kaido is unbeatable. At the end of the video, I go back into why story-wise the Byakko King of Beasts makes sense for it to be Zoro. To be honest, I was debating whether it makes sense for Zoro to find a Zoan fruit and eat it, but purely based off my gut and instincts, it doesn't feel like it makes sense for Zoro to opt for a Zoan fruit. Like even if it were presented to him, unless it were to save Luffy, I don't know if he would willingly choose to eat one. Right now in Wano, like if Marco were to die, Zoro getting the Phoenix fruit could make sense. The blue flames, it'd buff Zoro really well, giving him regeneration and flying powers. Zoro being able to wield his sword with his mouth would make a lot of sense then also. Marco's fruit could also make sense for Sanji too, to be honest. Wait, is Marco gonna die? I'll pocket this idea for now, but besides Marco's fruit, if the whole series is Zoro progressively getting stronger and imitating animals on his own, and we're seeing examples where his spiritual desires are having physical manifestations, also we're seeing examples of how potent Haki allows people to bring their desires into reality, then maybe as per my Haki Devil Fruit Connection theory, Zoro will eventually command his spirit energy and natural energy to change himself into an animal, becoming a natural Zoan. This method might even tie into how devil fruits are created in the first place. I think beyond that, we've seen animal characters have an easier time using natural abilities. Kaido as a dragon can command flame clouds, conjure up wind, and even normally call for purple lightning. Then the minks use electro, and like I said before, that makes sense, and would be a great buff to Zoro who uses a lot of wind attacks. I think Zoro being a swordsman on top of this, and I want to get in more depth on swordsman in a different video, but I think Zoro with his affinity with nature and air, there's a level beyond that that would make Zoro insanely powerful, and that's the ability Zoro might develop to cut spirit energy. This idea that Zoro can essentially become a soul cutter is not without basis. I think Zoro's newest technique, Flame Split, kind of demonstrates that Zoro can cut energy. Kinemon was the first to show this technique, and it honestly doesn't make sense to think that this is related to them being a Lunarian. I think that swordsmen have a different potential. Throughout One Piece, the idea that a top tier swordsman can wield their sword to cut whatever they want and have enough precision to cut steel but not cut paper is something that stems from Wano ideology. I think to be able to cut fire, you have to have that intimate understanding I mentioned in my 4th Haki video. Zoro probably learned the life energy of fire, whereas Kinemon, who fought Kaido and stood on top of boiling water for 1 hour, definitely understands heat and fire more than most. This attack could be related to air pressure, but unlike the flying air slashes, these cuts are direct with the blade it seems. In this scene, it looks like Zoro is stalling Prometheus by cutting him also. If it were just separating the flames, I don't think that would stop Prometheus. It seems like Zoro is literally cutting the spirit energy here. I think this scene against Monet really drives this point home. Zoro without Haki was able to disable Monet just from fear. It almost feels like he literally cut her soul. And Tashigi's rationalization culminated to the point where she says she has never seen someone win a fight against a Logia user like this. It wasn't just fear though, it was like Monet couldn't put her spirit back together, like it was permanently damaged almost. Imagine if you put the Wano ideology of being so precise to cut what you want with this perspective. Imagine if Zoro could just cut the souls of objects, destroying and damaging them, but not damaging the outside. Oh wait, we don't have to imagine this. In the manga, the scene was referenced and not shown, and I think I know why, but it was shown in the anime. The scene in Wano where Zoro is at the gambling house and finds that they were cheating and takes on the Yakuza, he literally does what I said, where he is cutting them, but not cutting them, and they pass out. And this scene doesn't feel quite like Conqueror's Haki, and had they shown it in the manga, we would have known because they would have done the foaming at the mouth thing. But if you watch this scene, it feels very similar to the Monet scene, and it even uses a similar Quake Shock move. And the same disbelief that Monet had, these guys had. And they didn't get knocked out in a way we've seen with Conquerors before. And if we were to tie this back even more, I think the way Zoro ignited zombie Ryuma was by cutting the spirit more than the physical body. He had a lot of respect for Ryuma because of their fight, and his will was probably to let Ryuma's soul be free, which I think in Japanese mythology, when blue flames leave the body, it means the spirit is leaving too. The other part that if you watch my Haki Devil Fruit Connection video is that if one is able to manipulate energy, eventually I think they will be able to manipulate matter also, and we see that with awakened Prometheus. So the same thing with Zoro's ability to cut anything is similar to matter manipulation, so it makes sense that eventually Zoro will be able to cut energy, and makes even more sense that his Conqueror's Haki allows him to affect the spirit energy of others also. And when I think about it, this could be a way Zoro ends up defeating potential immortal foes in the future by destroying their souls. So end of series Zoro is looking like a white tiger, natural Zoan manipulator, king of beasts, and soul destroyer, and of course, the strongest swordsman in the world. And I think Luffy and Sanji will have comparable power-ups to this, and it won't be that they will be without rivals. There will be powers rivaling these, and some of these are the reasons why I think we still don't know some of the most pivotal characters' powers yet, because we have to learn progressively about each level. And it feels like this even more when Doflamingo says that there's even higher powers than the ones that have been revealed. It low-key feels like this is not going to be the last time you're going to hear this. On top of that, something that I've been thinking about with how powerful Kaido is, it still feels like in the grand scheme of things, there are powers that even Kaido can't fight against, given how he positioned himself in the world. With how powerful Kaido is, he still feels a need to partner with Big Mom, and maybe it has to do with what he witnessed at God Valley. The other understanding again is that some of the most powerful characters do not have devil fruits, and they're the ones still shrouded in mystery. And it makes sense if it's because we literally wouldn't have been able to understand that level of power, since Oda likes to give us the power perspective of the Straw Hats. All this being said, I have more videos coming up. If you like my theories, follow me on my other social medias. I was told to post these up on Reddit also. Make sure to check the descriptions for more info. I got plenty of videos stockpiled and will be getting at them soon. I know I should do the Sanji and Luffy next, since I just did the Haki Devil Fruit videos, but I low-key want to do Vegapunk and Chopper. They seem so exciting, but I don't know if it'll happen given how deprioritized Chopper has been, so it'll be my next filler theory in between my other videos. Side note, just going back to the Byakko representation, I just wanted to put this out there. What if, because of the medicine given to Zoro that is allowing him to somehow still function in Wano, the stress, honestly Zoro gets put through some of the most taxing situations, causes his hair to turn white, making him actually the white tiger. And I wanted to read this out loud about the Byakko. The white tiger represents the color white, the element of metal, the season autumn, the virtue of righteousness, and the Byakko controls wind. Though the Byakko is a white tiger and is represented by the color white, the color it commonly gets depicted with is green, since green is used to depict air. And I don't know if you knew this, but since shimotsuki means frost moon in Japanese, it also means November, which is autumn in Japan. And apparently that's also like Ryuma's birth month. But yeah, that sounds a lot like Zoro. Then one step more, the Byakko only appears when the ruling emperor is exceptionally virtuous, or the world is at peace. So once the Straw Hats take down Kaido and put Momonosuke on the throne, then that lore is completed, and white-haired Zoro, or Zoro the new king of beasts, is now present. Even more of a side note is maybe this explains Zoro and Chopper's notably close relationship, because Chopper is an animal turned human and Zoro is a human turned animal. They are basically on the same wavelength kind of energy, and it's kind of cute if you think of it like this baby reindeer messing with this monstrous tiger, but they both take care of each other. I wonder if there's some kind of mythology or historical reference for a story between the two animals. And lastly, I think Zoro's name needs an upgrade. Also, because if he's paralleling Rayleigh, and Rayleigh was the Dark King, then Zoro being the Beast King or King of Beasts would be really cool. But also, that had me thinking, unlike the other epithets like Roger the King of Pirates, and Garp, Hero of the Navy, why is Rayleigh called the Dark King? What could that possibly mean? I just want to add that this Zoro power-up theory of him manifesting the Byakko could take another turn, and he could manifest a specific demon and become similar and opposite to Sengoku's Buddha fruit. But I don't know enough of the various demonic mythologies to make that make sense, and I definitely prefer Tiger God Zoro over reformed Demon Zoro. Anyways, I got more in store. The One Piece verse is so huge, and I can't wait to see it unfold.